The grand palace of the Zytherian Empire stood high above the Silver City like a mountain made of light. Its walls were made of crystal metal. Its towers touched the clouds. Its guards stood in perfect lines with shining armor and blue energy spears. Every door was watched. Every hall was protected. This was the safest place in the empire. On that day, the main royal hall was full. Alien nobles from many worlds had arrived. Military commanders stood near the center floor. Diplomats whispered in low voices. Servants moved quietly through the long room with silver trays. Above them all sat Queen Valera on her high throne. Her face was calm, cold, and proud. Beside her stood Princess Soraya, daughter of the queen and mother of the royal child. Today was meant to be peaceful. The Empire had invited a small human delegation from Earth. Humans were still new to the wider galaxy. Many alien races did not know what to think of them. Some believed humans were clever but weak. Others believed they were too emotional, too wild, too young as a people. The Zytherians respected strength, and most of them did not yet see humanity as truly important. Near the far side of the hall stood one of the human guests. His name was Aaron Hale. He was not dressed like the other diplomats. He wore a dark, formal military coat from Earth, simple and neat, with no bright jewels or shining colors. He stood straight, quiet, and still. His face showed very little. He watched everything without seeming to move at all. A few nobles looked at him and then looked away. To them, he was only a human officer sent to stand in the room and say a few polite words. Then the royal child entered. Little Array was young, perhaps no more than 6 in human years. Her eyes glowed soft gold. Her silver hair fell across her shoulders in waves. She wore a small royal robe covered in tiny stars. To the Empire, she was precious because she carried the blood of the royal line. As she walked beside her mother, the room softened. Even hard soldiers smiled a little. Servants bowed. Nobles lowered their heads. The child looked around with wonder, but there was something uneasy in her face that few noticed. Princess Soraya placed a hand on her shoulder and guided her forward. Then the formal greetings began. A commander from the Northern Fleet stepped forward and offered a military oath. A noblewoman from the Eastern Moons presented a gift. A scholar from the Alliance spoke of peace and trade. The child listened, but her eyes kept moving. She looked not at the speakers, but at the guards, at the doors, at the high windows. Aaron noticed it. He did not move, but he noticed. The girl's breathing changed. Her fingers tightened around her robe. She took one step backward, then another. Her mother leaned down and said something softly, but Liari suddenly pulled away. At first, the room thought it was childish play, but then Liari turned and ran. Gasps spread through the royal hall. Guards moved at once, but they hesitated. No one wanted to frighten the child more. She darted between 2 nobles and passed under a servant's arm. Her eyes were wide with fear now, real fear. The room froze in confusion. "Your Highness," one guard called, stepping after her. Liari did not stop. She ran across the open floor of the hall, past alien officers, past the edge of the throne steps, past a group of shocked diplomats, and then she reached Aaron. Without saying a word, the little royal child moved behind the human officer and hid herself against his back. Her small hands clutched the back of his coat. She pressed herself close like he was a wall that no danger could pass. The hall became silent, not quiet, silent. Energy spears rose at once. Royal guards turned toward Aaron. Several commanders stepped forward with hands near their weapons. One noble shouted that the human had done something. Another demanded that the child be removed at once. Aaron did not reach for a weapon. He did not even turn quickly. He looked down just enough to see the small hand gripping his coat. Then he lifted his eyes toward the throne. Queen Valera had risen to her feet. For the first time that day, the queen's perfect control broke. She gasped. The sound was soft, but in that great silent room, it was heard by all. Princess Soraya looked pale with shock. "Liari," she said carefully, "come back to me." The child held tighter to Aaron. "No," she whispered. Everyone heard that too. A senior royal guard stepped forward. "Human, stand away from the child." Aaron finally spoke, and his voice was calm. "She came to me." The guard's eyes narrowed. "You will step aside now." Before Aaron could answer, little Liari's voice came again, trembling this time. "Please do not let them take me." The words struck the room like a weapon. Princess Soraya's face changed from confusion to pain. Liari, no one will hurt you. But the child's eyes remained fixed on the guards. Queen Valera slowly descended the steps of her throne. Her robes flowed behind her like dark water. Nobody moved. Nobody dared breathe too loudly. She stopped several steps away from Aaron and the child. Her golden eyes studied the little girl, then the human. Liari, the queen said, her voice softer than anyone had ever heard. Why are you hiding behind the human? The child looked around the room, saw the many armored figures, and pressed closer to Aaron. Because he is safe. A wave of whispers moved through the hall. Safe. The royal child of the Zytherian Empire had called a human safe in front of the whole court. One commander could not contain himself. This is madness. The human must be removed and questioned. He has somehow influenced her. Aaron's expression did not change, but something colder entered his eyes. Queen Valera noticed. So quick to accuse, she said without looking at the commander. The commander lowered his head but said nothing. Princess Soraya stepped forward with tears gathering in her eyes. Liari, tell me what frightened you. The child looked toward the line of royal guards, and then toward one dark archway at the far end of the hall. Her lips shook. They were watching again, she said. A chill passed through the room. Who was watching? Asked the queen. The child did not answer. Instead, she whispered, they always come closer when no one sees. That was when Aaron turned his head slightly toward the archway. Just slightly. But it was enough to show that he too had noticed something. Queen Valera saw it at once. You saw something, she said. Aaron answered in the same calm tone. I saw movement where there should have been none. The guards at the archway stiffened. A palace officer snapped. Impossible. That corridor is sealed. Aaron looked at him. Then someone opened it. The queen raised one hand. At once a squad of guards rushed toward the archway. The room erupted in whispers. Nobles stepped back. Diplomats stared. Princess Soraya looked between her daughter and the human with growing fear. Liari remained behind Aaron. He stood like stone. No comfort words, no panic, no dramatic movement. Just stillness. A moment later, shouts came from the corridor. Then a flash of blue light. Then a scream. Weapons were drawn everywhere. Nobles rushed backward. Guards spread through the hall. The air suddenly filled with tension and the smell of charged energy. Queen Valera's face hardened, sealed the hall. Massive doors began closing. Too late, from the dark archway, 3 armored figures burst into the room. They moved fast and low, their armor dark and strange. Nothing like Zytherian design. One of them fired a pulse weapon toward the throne. Another threw a smoke charge. The third turned directly toward the child. The royal child cried out and clung tighter to Aaron. The closest guards raised their weapons, but the attackers were already moving. Then, Aaron moved too. For the first time since entering the hall, the human officer exploded into motion. 1 second, he was standing still. The next, he had stepped in front of Liari, seized a fallen ceremonial spear from a shocked guard, and struck the nearest attacker with such force that the enemy crashed across the polished floor. The whole hall stared. No one had expected that speed. No one had expected that power. The second attacker aimed at Aaron's chest. Aaron twisted aside, drove the spear shaft into the alien's weapon hand, and sent the blaster flying. The attacker tried to recover, but Aaron was already there. One hard blow to the throat. The enemy dropped. The third attacker nearly reached the child. Then, Queen Valera herself struck with a beam of blue energy from her hand and sent the intruder crashing into a pillar. Smoke drifted through the hall. Guards surrounded the fallen enemies. Silence returned, but now it was full of fear. Aaron looked down. Liari still hid behind him. Slowly, carefully, he lowered the spear. Queen Valera stared at him, not with pride, not with simple surprise, but with something deeper, something uneasy. Because now, everyone in the hall understood 2 things. The child had not run to the human by chance, and the human was far more dangerous than any of them had believed. The queen looked at the small royal child. Then she looked at Aaron Hale, and for the first time in many years, the ruler of the Zytherian Empire felt that the future had just changed inside her own throne room. The smoke slowly cleared from the royal hall, but the fear stayed. Broken glass shimmered across the white floor. A burned mark stained one of the great pillars where the queen's energy strike had landed. Guards dragged the wounded attackers away in chains that glowed red with restraint power. Nobles stood close together in frightened groups, whispering fast. Diplomats from other worlds watched with wide eyes, already thinking about how this shocking event would spread across the galaxy. At the center of it all stood Aaron Hale. His breathing was steady, his face was calm. He had just taken down 2 trained attackers in front of the entire royal court, yet he stood as if nothing unusual had happened. Behind him, Liari still held the back of his coat. Princess Soraya slowly approached, careful not to frighten her daughter. Her face was pale and shaken. "Liari," she said softly, "it is over now. You may come to me." The child looked up at her mother, but then her eyes shifted toward the hall doors, toward the guards, toward the shadows between the columns. She did not move. Aaron finally turned halfway, just enough to look at the child. His voice was low and even. "You are safe for this moment." For some reason, those simple words seemed to calm her more than the many promises of the court. Queen Valera saw that too. The queen stepped closer, her gaze fixed on Aaron. "Human," she said, "state your name and role." "Aaron Hale," he answered. "Captain, Terran Defense Fleet." A low wave of whispers ran through the nobles again. Some had expected him to be a simple military escort. Others had thought he was only a ceremonial officer sent by Earth to stand beside diplomats. Now that lie had been burned away. The queen studied him. "Captain Hale, did you know an attack would happen here today?" "No." "Did you suspect?" "I noticed signs." The queen narrowed her eyes. "What signs?" Aaron glanced toward the far archway, a sealed corridor with fresh movement. 3 guards holding their stance too perfectly. A child watching the room like prey, not like royalty. The queen's face remained unreadable, but several commanders looked embarrassed. He had seen more in a few minutes than their palace security had seen all day. One older general stepped forward, his armor heavy and decorated with war medals. His name was General Tharok, and he did not like what he was seeing. "A child's fear proves nothing," he said sharply, "and a human's quick action does not erase suspicion. These attackers might have been planted to raise Earth's standing in this court." The accusation hit the room hard. Some nobles immediately nodded. Others looked uncertain. Humans were still outsiders. Many in the Empire did not trust how quickly they had risen in alliance talks. Princess Soraya looked offended, but the queen raised one hand to stop all speech. Only Aaron answered. "If I wanted to raise Earth's standing," he said, "I would choose a method that did not place a child in the path of armed killers." General Tharok frowned. Words. Aaron's eyes settled on him, and the temperature of the room seemed to drop. "You are free to believe that," Aaron said, "but your enemies entered your palace, crossed your sealed corridors, and nearly touched your royal bloodline. If you wish to spend this moment blaming me instead of fixing your failure, that is your choice." Several guards looked down. The general's jaw tightened, but he did not answer. Queen Valera turned toward her security officers. "Search every corridor, lock every gate. No one enters or leaves the palace without my direct command." "It will be done," said the chief guard. The queen then looked at Princess Soraya. "Take Liari to the inner chambers." At that, the child shook her head violently and pressed herself harder against Aaron. "No." The queen blinked once. Princess Soraya looked heartbroken. "Liari, please." The child's voice came out in a whisper. "They will come again." Queen Valera lowered herself to one knee so that she and the child were closer in height. It was a rare thing to see. A queen kneeling in the hall. "And why?" she asked gently. "Do you believe the human will stop them?" Liari looked at Aaron, then back at the queen. "Because he is not afraid." The queen slowly rose. In that moment, she remembered old reports about humans. Reports many in the court had dismissed as exaggerated. Stories of human soldiers holding lines on burning colonies. Stories of Terran rescue fleets entering combat zones that other species avoided. Stories of endurance, of anger, of stubborn courage. She had once called such tales useful propaganda. Now, she was no longer certain. A palace intelligence officer hurried into the hall and bowed. "Your Majesty, the attackers are not palace staff. Their armor has no clear imperial marking. Their weapons are black market Varkari design." The queen's face hardened. The Varkari raiders. Brutal hunters from the outer systems. Thieves, killers, and mercenaries. They served anyone who paid enough. General Tharok spoke first. A raid team inside the palace means outside support. This was not a random attack. Another officer added, "We have also found signal traces near the eastern tower. Someone inside the city may be guiding them." Princess Soraya pulled in a sharp breath. They were trying to take Liari. No one denied it. The hall became colder. Aaron looked down at the child again. Has this happened before? The room turned toward him. The question was bold, but it was the right one. Liari hesitated. Her fingers twisted in the fabric of Aaron's coat. "Not like this," she said. "But I kept seeing them. In mirrors, indoors, in the gardens." Princess Soraya covered her mouth. "Why did you not tell me?" "I did," the child whispered. "But everyone said I was dreaming." The shame in the room was heavy. The queen closed her eyes for one short moment. Her granddaughter had been warning them, and they had not listened. Aaron did not speak blame aloud. He did not need to. It was already everywhere. Suddenly, alarms began to sound. Not the sharp alarm of an intruder in a hallway. This one was deep and heavy and terrible. Every head in the room lifted. An officer at the rear of the hall shouted, "Orbital alert! Unknown ships exiting fold space above the capital." The hall erupted again. Another officer ran in carrying a glowing data slate, multiple signatures, fast attack craft and boarding cruisers. Valkyrie pattern confirmed. General Tharok cursed under his breath. A full strike team. Queen Valera's voice cut through the chaos. Battle stations. Raise planetary shields. A technician answered at once from the side station. Shields rising, but enemy signals are already probing the palace grid. Princess Soraya turned pale. Aaron looked up toward the great skylight dome, high above the hall, where faint warning lights now flashed across the crystal ceiling. He had seen this pattern before. First infiltration, then confusion, then the main strike. The child tugged lightly at his coat. "They are here." Aaron nodded once. "Yes." Queen Valera heard that and studied him again. "You understand them." "I understand them. I understand raids," Aaron answered. "And I understand what happens when defenders waste time." The queen did not take offense. She asked the next question like a ruler making the hardest choice. "If they breach the palace, where would they go first?" "The child," Aaron said immediately. "Always the child. She is leverage, bloodline, panic, escape route. Everything begins with her." General Tharok stepped forward. "Then she should be taken below with elite guard." Aaron looked at him. "And if your guard line has already been compromised?" The general's silence was answer enough. The queen turned toward the commanders. "How long until enemy dropships can reach the palace?" A tactical officer swallowed. 12 minutes if the shield holds. Less if it fails. 12 minutes. Not enough for pride. Not enough for court politics. Not enough for doubt. Queen Valera looked at Aaron Hale, the human captain her nobles had ignored only an hour before. Then she looked at Liari, still hiding behind him. The child had already chosen. The queen drew a long breath. "Captain Hale, yes. Until this threat is broken, you will remain with my granddaughter." Gasps rose again from the court. General Tharok protested at once. "Your Majesty, you cannot place the royal child in human hands." The queen's gaze cut to him like a blade. And yet when death entered this hall, it was human hands that stood between her and the enemy. The general fell silent. Princess Soraya looked afraid, but she also looked desperate. A mother who no longer knew whom to trust. She turned toward Aaron. "Can you protect her?" Aaron did not make a grand promise. He did not speak like a hero from a legend. He simply said, "I will try." For some reason, that honest answer carried more weight than any oath in the room. Then, the palace shook. A dull impact rolled through the crystal walls. Somewhere high above, the first battle had begun. And in the middle of the royal hall, with alarms singing and fear growing, Queen Valera realized something that unsettled her deeply. The fate of the royal child might now depend, not on the Empire's ancient power, but on a quiet human soldier from Earth. The palace, their deep warning sound rolled through the great halls like the voice of a giant machine calling the Empire to war. Red lights flashed along the high walls. Servants ran. Guards moved in sharp lines toward defense positions. Outside, beyond the crystal windows of the upper palace, small bright streaks crossed the sky as the Cytherian fighters launched to meet the Valkyrie attack ships descending from orbit. Inside the royal hall, order broke into controlled panic. Queen Valera gave command after command without hesitation. The main defense shield was to be reinforced. The lower gates were to be sealed. The eastern tower was to be evacuated. Loyal fleet commanders were summoned to battle stations. Every word from the Queen was sharp and exact. But even in that storm of command, one fact remained clear. The enemy wanted Liari. Aaron knew it. The Queen knew it. The Queen knew it. And now the whole court knew it. A tactical officer hurried toward the throne with a floating display at his side. Your Majesty, enemy boarding craft are splitting into 3 vectors, 2 toward the palace towers, 1 directly toward the royal wing. General Tharok growled. They know the structure, which means they have inside data, Aaron said. The general shot him a dark look, but this time he did not argue. Princess Soraya moved quickly to her daughter. Liari, come, we must go to the lower chambers. The child looked at the guards gathering near the princess and then looked at Aaron. Her fear returned at once. She stepped away from her mother and closer to the human. No, Soraya's voice broke. Please. Aaron knelt so his eyes were level with the child's. Liari, listen to me. You need to move now. We do not have much time. She looked at him and asked the question only a frightened child would ask in such a moment. Will you stay? Aaron answered at once. Yes, that was enough. She gave a small nod. The Queen saw it and made her final decision. Captain Hale, you will escort the child and the princess to the lower vault route. A secure transport will meet you at the south chamber. General Tharok stepped forward. I will assign 12 royal guards. 6, Aaron said. The general stared. What? Too many feet. Too much noise. Too many chances for the wrong person to stand close. The general bristled. You presume much for an outsider. Aaron rose slowly to full height, and you nearly lost the child in your own throne room. The word struck like a hammer. Before the general could explode, Queen Valera spoke. 6 guards. Loyal only. Captain Hale leads the movement. The order ended all argument. Within moments they were moving. Aaron walked at the front. 2 guards ahead, 2 behind, 2 close to the princess. Liari stayed near Aaron, her small hand gripping one side of his coat. Princess Soraya walked on the child's other side, trying to stay calm for her daughter, though fear was written across her face. The group left the royal hall through a side passage that curved downward into the inner palace. The sounds of battle followed them. Distant booms, tremors under the floor, the crack of defense guns. Once, through a narrow window in a connecting corridor, Aaron saw a Valkyrie strike craft burn across the city sky, trailing black smoke before crashing beyond the palace gardens. The lower halls of the palace were colder and darker than the upper court. These passages were built for security, not beauty. Smooth metal walls, hidden blast doors, narrow turns, defense nodes in the ceiling. Aaron watched everything. He counted steps. He marked exits. He listened for breathing that did not belong. One of the guards noticed his focus. You move as if you know the place. I know danger, Aaron said. They reached a crossing point where 3 corridors met. Aaron stopped. The guards tensed at once. Princess Soraya whispered, What is it? He did not answer right away. He was listening. There. A faint scrape. Not ahead. Above. Back, Aaron said. The group moved just as the ceiling panel burst open. 2 Valkyrie raiders dropped into the corridor with shock blades drawn. Their armor was black and rough, built for violence. Their long helmets shaped like hunting beasts. Behind them, more movement sounded in the vent shaft. The first raider lunged toward Liari. Aaron met him head-on. He drove forward, slammed his shoulder into the alien's chest, and sent both of them into the wall. Before the raider could recover, Aaron ripped the shock blade from its hand and struck upward under the jaw seam of the helmet. The raider collapsed. The second attacker rushed past, aiming for the princess. A royal guard intercepted, but the Valkyrie struck with brutal force, cutting through the guard's shoulder armor and throwing him aside. Soraya cried out and grabbed Liari. Aaron turned in time to see the raider raising a weapon. He threw the captured blade. It spun once in the air and hit the attacker in the neck. The raider stumbled. The nearest royal guard finished it with an energy spear. Move, Aaron said. More sounds came from the shaft. They ran. This time no one argued with his lead. They passed through 2 sealed doors down a stairwell, across a maintenance bridge above a power chamber glowing blue below. The palace shook again from another impact. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Princess Soraya struggled to keep pace. She was royal, graceful, trained in diplomacy and ceremony, not in running through war zones with attackers behind her. Aaron noticed it. At the next turn, he took Liari into one arm without slowing. The child wrapped both arms around his neck and held tight. With his free hand, he drew the compact Terran sidearm hidden beneath his formal coat. One of the guards looked surprised. "You were armed in the throne room?" Aaron did not look at him. Always. They reached the south chamber. The transport was not there. Instead, the doors stood half open. One guard lay dead just inside, armor blackened by energy fire. The remaining guards spread out. Princess Soraya covered her mouth. Aaron handed Liari back to her mother for 1 second and crouched beside the fallen guard. He touched the armor plate, still warm. "They were just here," he said. One of the guards whispered, "Then the transport is gone." "No," Aaron answered, looking toward the chamber's far side. "It never arrived." He stepped inside. The room was circular, built around a landing platform that opened to lower tunnels leading beneath the palace. A control panel near the wall flickered with damage. There were signs of forced entry and signal jamming. A trap. Princess Soraya stepped into the doorway, holding Liari close. "What do we do now?" Aaron was about to answer when the chamber lights died. Darkness swallowed the room. Liari gave a frightened cry, then emergency red lights snapped on. 3 doors around the chamber opened at once. Varkari raiders poured in. The guards fired immediately. Blue energy filled the room. 2 attackers fell, but more came behind them. 1 guard was dragged down. Another took a blade through the chest. The chamber became noise and motion in flashes of violent light. Aaron shoved the princess and child behind a loading pillar. "Stay down." Then he moved. He fired twice, with clean Terran precision. 1 raider dropped. Another spun back. Aaron grabbed a fallen energy spear, turned, and struck a third across the faceplate hard enough to break the helmet seal. He kicked the body aside and advanced straight into the fight, like a man who had done this too many times to fear it. A huge Varkari elite came through the center door carrying a heavy shock axe. The creature roared and charged. 1 royal guard met it and died instantly. Aaron caught the fallen guard's sidearm fired at the elite's knee joint, and as the giant dropped, he stepped in and slammed the butt of the weapon into the side of its helmet, again and again until the creature stopped moving. Princess Soraya stared from behind the pillar. She had heard stories of human warriors. Stories did not look like this. This was not rage without control. This was discipline sharpened by survival. A raider broke through the sideline and lunged toward the princess. Before Soraya could react, little Liari cried out, "Aaron!" Aaron turned at the sound and crossed half the chamber in a blur. He hit the attacker from the side with such force that both crashed into the wall. The raider brought up a blade. Aaron trapped the wrist, twisted until bone cracked, then drove the alien's own weapon into its chest. Silence fell slowly. The last attacker collapsed. Only 3 royal guards remained standing. The chamber stank of heat, smoke, and blood. Aaron turned first to the princess and child. "Are you hurt?" Soraya shook her head, too stunned to speak. Liari looked at him with wide gold eyes. She was still afraid, but not of him, not even close. Far above them, the palace thundered under attack. Aaron checked the chamber exits, then the broken control panel. "We cannot stay here." One of the surviving guards asked, "Where now?" Aaron looked toward the maintenance map flickering on the damaged wall. "There is always another way," he said. Princess Soraya found her voice at last. "How do you remain so calm?" Aaron paused. For just a second, the hard line of his face seemed older than before, because panic kills faster than weapons. Then he looked down at Liari, and because she needs someone who will keep moving. The child took 1 small step toward him and again hid close at his side. Outside the chamber, the palace war grew louder. Inside, the princes of the empire understood a frightening truth. If this human had not been here, her daughter would already be gone. Far above the lower chambers, Queen Valera stood inside the palace command sanctum and watched the battle unfold across a wall of living light. The display showed the capital city from orbit down to street level. Enemy strike craft cut through the sky like black knives. Scytherian defense cannons lit the clouds with blue fire. Fleet icons rose and vanished as ships fought in the upper atmosphere. Reports streamed in on every side. Casualties, shield failures, tower breaches, internal sabotage points. The Queen absorbed it all without flinching, but beneath her iron control there was a growing storm. She had sent her granddaughter away under the protection of a human, not a royal champion. Not a royal champion, not a blood-sworn house guard. A human captain from Earth. If anyone had suggested such a thing that morning, she might have called it an insult. Now it was reality. General Tharok stood beside the tactical floor, wounded but still commanding. The western shield ring has stabilized. Enemy boarding pressure remains highest around the lower vault routes. The Queen turned sharply, as expected. A palace intelligence officer bowed low. Your Majesty, we intercepted fragments of enemy signal traffic. They are using a code phrase that repeats across channels. What phrase? The officer swallowed. The little star. The Queen's eyes turned cold as ice. Liari. There was no longer any doubt. This was not a random raid. It was a planned royal extraction. Someone wanted the child alive. Princess Soraya's voice suddenly came over a comlink, broken with static. Mother, can you hear me? The Queen moved at once to the channel station. Soraya, we were ambushed in the south chamber. Aaron got us out. The transport was a trap. We are moving through maintenance routes. The Queen closed her eyes for a brief second, mastering herself. Is Liari alive? Yes. The Queen exhaled. Then another voice entered the channel. Aaron, we need a clean route, and we need it now. Enemy teams are tracking predicted palace evacuation paths. Someone with access knowledge is guiding them. General Tharok stepped toward the channel. Then head east. We can meet you with an armored squad. Aaron answered immediately. No, too obvious. They will expect to regroup towards your strongest position. The general snapped. You are speaking to the Imperial Command, and I am keeping your heir alive, Aaron said. Silence followed. Then Queen Valera asked, what do you suggest? Aaron's answer came without hesitation. There is an old thermal line beneath the palace foundations. It links to service tunnels outside the garden wall. Hard to use, easy to overlook. That is where I would take her. General Tharok frowned. Those routes are unstable and unguarded. That is why they may still be open, Aaron said. The Queen looked at the tactical map. The old thermal conduits were barely marked. Ancient systems from before the palace's last reconstruction. Forgotten by most. Risky, dark, hard to defend, but also difficult to predict. She made the choice. Captain Hale, proceed to the thermal line. I will divert combat pressure away from your sector. Understood. The channel cut. General Tharok turned to the Queen. Your Majesty, this is madness. You are giving battlefield authority to an alien outsider. The Queen looked at him with controlled fury. No, General. I am giving authority to the only person who has not failed my granddaughter today. He bowed his head and said no more. In the lower palace, Aaron led the small group through service passages no noble had likely seen in generations. Pipes ran along the walls. Steam hissed from vents. The air was warmer now and smelled of metal and dust. Emergency lights were weak here. The surviving guards moved more quietly than before. The fight in the south chamber had stripped away their pride and left only duty. Princess Soraya walked close to Aaron. Her royal composure had changed. She no longer looked at him as a foreign guest. She looked at him as a man carrying a burden with no room for mistakes. How did you know about the thermal line? She asked. Aaron kept his eyes forward. I study exits when I enter a new place. You studied an imperial palace in one visit. I studied survival. Liari, walking between them now, looked up at him. Do all humans do that? Aaron glanced at her. The ones who live. The child considered this with unusual seriousness. They reached a thick hatch marked by age and rust. One of the guards forced it open with a tool blade. Heat rolled out from below. The tunnel beyond dropped steeply into darkness. Aaron checked the path first, then signaled the others forward. One by one, they descended metal ladders into the thermal passage. Beneath them, old reactors hummed deep in the palace foundations. The floor plates shook with distant battle. Steam rose in pale clouds around glowing pipes. They moved single file. At one point, the tunnel narrowed so much that the armored guards had to turn sideways. At another, part of the walkway had collapsed, forcing them to cross one by one over a maintenance beam while hot vapor roared below. Princess Soraya nearly slipped. Aaron caught her arm without a word and guided her across. She looked at him after reaching the far side. Thank you. He gave one short nod. Ahead, the path forked. Aaron crouched and touched the floor. One of the guards asked, What are you checking? Dust pattern. The guard stared. Aaron pointed. Left path has fresh disturbance. Heavy. Recently used. The guards immediately raised their weapons. Princess Soraya whispered, Enemy, most likely. How can you tell? He stood and answered simply, because someone is hunting us. They took the right path. 10 minutes later, the tunnel widened into an old junction chamber. Broken machines sat along the walls like dead metal animals. A transport rail crossed the center of the room, no longer active. For the first time since leaving the throne hall, there was a moment of stillness. Too much stillness. Aaron signaled a stop. Liari moved closer to him again. What is wrong? He listened. Then he heard it. A click. Not loud. Just enough. Down, he said. He grabbed Liari and dropped behind a machine casing as the chamber erupted in gunfire. Bolts of red and white energy tore through the room from hidden positions above the rail line. One royal guard fell before he could turn. Another fired back toward a catwalk where Varkari raiders appeared in the flashing light. Princess Soraya hit the ground hard behind a crate. The last two guards formed a line in front of her. Aaron looked up and counted the ambush points. 4 shooters above, maybe 2 flanking, maybe more waiting to close. Bad position. He leaned close to Liari. Stay beside your mother. Do not move until I say. She grabbed his sleeve. Do not go. His expression softened for the smallest moment. I am coming back. Then he rose and ran into fire. He moved between broken machines and fallen panels, using every piece of cover the chamber offered. One raider fired down at him from the catwalk. Aaron seized a metal tool from the floor and threw it upward. The raider flinched for half a second. That was enough. Aaron fired and dropped him. Another attacker shifted position. Aaron did not shoot. He moved. He climbed a side ladder under fire, kicked off the wall, caught the lower edge of the catwalk, and pulled himself up with brutal speed. A Varkari lunged at him with a blade. Aaron trapped the weapon arm, smashed his forehead into the raider's faceplate, and sent the body over the railing. Below, Princess Soraya could barely follow the movement. Humans, she thought. What are they made of? The remaining raiders turned their fire upward at Aaron's new position, exposing themselves. The royal guards below took the chance and fired. One enemy dropped. Another screamed and vanished behind steam. Then the chamber lights flickered. A heavy figure stepped from the far tunnel, larger than the others. Broader armor. A command hunter. The Varkari leader pointed directly at Liari. Alive. The creature snarled in broken trade speech. Take the child. 2 more raiders rushed from cover. Aaron jumped from the catwalk. He hit one in mid-stride and drove him into the floor. The second almost reached Soraya before Aaron rolled, fired upward from one knee, and shattered the attacker's chest plate. The command hunter charged. It hit Aaron like a machine. Both slammed into the rail platform. Steel bent under the impact. The hunter was stronger than the earlier elites. Its armor was layered. Its claws tore through metal. Aaron fought without panic. Block, turn, strike, break distance. The hunter swung a shock mace. Aaron ducked under it and drove his pistol into a gap under the arm joint, firing twice. The beast roared and backhanded him across the platform. Liari cried out. The hunter came again. Then Princess Soraya did something no one expected. The alien princess rose from cover, raised her hand, and unleashed a burst of royal energy that struck the hunter across the side of the face. The blast did not kill it, but it staggered the creature. Aaron came off the floor, took the fallen shock blade of a dead raider, and drove it through the damaged seam in the hunter's neck armor. The creature froze. The chamber became still again except for the hiss of steam and the hard breathing of the living. Aaron pulled the blade free. Princess Soraya stared at the dead hunter, then at Aaron. For the first time, she truly understood what her daughter had felt in the throne room. Not just safety, certainty. A person could stand near this human and believe the darkness would not take them easily. Aaron turned to Liari. I said I would come back. The child ran to him and hugged him around the waist. Far away in the command sanctum, Queen Valera received the battle update from the lower tunnels and stood in long silence. Then she whispered a truth she had not wanted to speak aloud. The child did not choose wrongly. The old tunnel beyond the ambush chamber curved upward toward the outer foundations of the palace. The heat faded slowly as the group climbed away from the thermal systems. Only 4 of them remained now. Aaron, Princess Soraya, little Liari. One surviving royal guard named Kellen, wounded in the arm but still steady enough to fight. The losses weighed on them all. Princess Soraya did not speak for several minutes. She walked with Liari in one hand and one energy pistol in the other, her royal robes torn and blackened by smoke. The image would have shocked the court. A princess crawling through forgotten tunnels, weapon drawn, trusting her child's life to a human soldier. Yet the strangest part was this. It no longer felt impossible. Ahead, Aaron reached a sealed maintenance door and checked the manual control wheel. This should open to the lower garden service levels. Kellen looked down the corridor behind them. And if the enemy has that route too, Aaron answered while working the lock. Then we break through them. There was no pride in his voice, no dramatic force, just fact. The door opened with a groan. Cool night air touched their faces. Beyond a threshold lay a narrow stone passage leading under the outer palace gardens. Moonlight filtered through slits high in the wall. For the first time since leaving the inner halls, they could hear the real world outside the palace. Distant battle in the city. Sirens, the crack of anti-air fire, the roar of ships far above. Liari looked up through one of the narrow slits. Is the sky burning? Princess Soraya glanced up too and saw orange light moving across the clouds. A little, she said softly, not knowing what else to say. Aaron stepped into the passage first. He signaled quiet. The group moved along the wall until the passage ended at a half-open stone arch hidden behind the roots of old garden trees. Beyond it lay the outer lower gardens of the palace, once a place of peace. Pools of silver water, tall blue grass, white stone paths, sculptures of ancient queens. Now it was a battlefield. A crashed Varkari dropship burned near the far wall. A royal defense turret sparked and smoked beside a shattered fountain. Bodies of palace guards and enemy raiders lay scattered among broken branches and torn flower beds. Kalen cursed under his breath. Princess Soraya held Liari closer. Aaron scanned the whole area. No movement. Can we reach safety from here? Asked Soraya. There is a secondary shield bunker beneath the West Garden Ridge, Kalen said. If it still stands. Aaron nodded. Then that is our target. They moved from cover to cover through the ruined garden. The palace rose behind them like a wounded giant, its upper towers flashing with battle light. Above, Cytherian defense ships fought in the clouds. One Varkari craft exploded so high that burning metal fell like stars. Liari watched it all with wide, silent eyes. Then she asked a question that made Soraya look at Aaron. Why are the bad ones so afraid to fight humans face to face? Aaron glanced at her as they crouched behind a broken statue. Because humans are difficult prey. Why? He paused, as if deciding how much truth a child should hear. Then he answered simply, because humans come from a hard world. When danger comes, we do not always run. Sometimes we become more dangerous. Kellen gave a rough laugh, despite the pain in his arm. That part, I believe. Soraya looked at Aaron. The stories about Earth, are they true? That Cullen, that your world tried to kill you from the day you were born. Storms, beasts, disease, oceans, ice, fire. Aaron checked the next stretch of open ground. Some stories are exaggerated, and the rest. He looked at her. The rest are not enough. She had no answer for that. They reached the ridge bunker hatch. It was open. Aaron held up one hand and everyone froze. On the ground near the hatch lay two dead palace technicians. Kellen whispered, "We are too late." "No," Aaron said quietly. "Maybe not." He crouched beside one of the bodies and examined the wound pattern. Killed from the front. No defensive marks. They opened the bunker for someone they believed was friendly. Soraya's voice fell to a whisper. More traitors. Aaron rose. Most likely. He moved to the bunker entrance and listened. No voices. No foot movement. But the air coming up from below carried the faint smell of ionized metal. Power weapons. Occupied. Aaron turned back to Soraya and Liari. "Stay here with Kellen." Kellen straightened. "You are going in alone." Aaron checked his sidearm and the captured blade at his belt. Alone is quieter. Soraya caught his arm before he descended. It was the first time she had touched him, not out of fear, but out of trust. "Come back." Aaron gave the smallest nod and disappeared into the bunker. The descent stair was dark. Emergency lights pulsed weak red every few meters. Aaron moved with care, silent as shadow. At the bottom he saw the first body, a bunker guard, dead for perhaps 10 minutes. Then he heard voices in the control room ahead, harsh Varkari speech. A second voice speaking Zytherian, the traitor. Aaron moved closer and listened. The Zytherian voice sounded nervous. The child must be alive. That was the agreement. A Varkari answered with contempt. You are in no place to repeat terms. The buyer wanted bloodline intact. Buyer. So there was someone behind the raid. Someone rich or powerful enough to hire Varkari hunters and palace traders. Aaron risked a glance into the control room. 4 Varkari. One Zytherian officer wearing palace security colors. The officer had just doomed himself. Aaron stepped into the doorway and fired twice. The trader dropped before he could turn. The first Varkari spun and roared. Aaron shot him through the visor. The next 2 opened fire together. Aaron took cover behind the control bank as white energy tore through panels and sent sparks across the room. He rolled left, came up behind the nearest attacker, drove the captured blade into its lower spine, then took its weapon while the 4th lunged in close. Too close for guns. Aaron met the raider hand to hand. The Varkari smashed into him and both crashed into a side console. Warning lights burst. The creature was powerful, but Aaron fought like a man who had long ago accepted pain as part of survival. He trapped one clawed arm, twisted, broke the elbow backward, and drove the alien into the live edge of a damaged panel. The shock stunned it. Aaron finished the fight. Then he stood still for a moment, breathing hard. The control room flickered around him. On the console display, he found what mattered. Bunker shields still active. External route clear. Emergency transport line functioning. He opened the channel to the surface hatch. Come down. Fast. Soraya, Liari, and Kellen entered minutes later. When Liari saw the bodies, she buried her face against her mother's side. Soraya looked at the dead trader in palace colors and closed her eyes in bitter grief. Aaron was already at the controls. This bunker can hold for a while, but not forever. There is a ground transport route beneath the ridge. It exits beyond the palace perimeter and links to a secure military relay station. Keelan looked surprised. You found that in old bunker files. Aaron shook his head. No. In the enemy route plan. Soraya stared at him. You read Varkari tactical script. Enough. She almost laughed from disbelief, but there was no strength left for it. Liari walked to Aaron and tugged lightly on his sleeve. Are humans all secret things? For the first time that night, the corner of Aaron's mouth moved a little, almost a smile. No, he said. Just prepared. Kellen sealed the bunker doors while Aaron powered the hidden transport line. The small armored carrier beneath the ridge groaned to life. Outside, the battle still burned. Inside, Princess Soraya looked at the human captain and finally saw the truth clearly. The galaxy had judged humans too soon. It had seen their youth and mistaken it for weakness. It had seen their small worlds on the map and mistaken them for insignificance. It had heard their diplomacy and missed the iron beneath it. And now one human had crossed a palace under siege, defeated hunters, exposed traitors, and kept the royal child alive. Soraya spoke the thought aloud before she could stop herself. If one human captain can do all this, Aaron looked up from the controls. Then what? Soraya held Liari close and stared into the dark tunnel ahead. Then perhaps the galaxy should be more careful with your kind. The armored transport began to move, and somewhere in the command sanctum above, Queen Vylera received another update and understood the same thing. Humanity was not a minor new race asking for a place in the stars. Humanity was a force still being measured far too lightly. The armored transport rolled through the underground tunnel beneath the west ridge with a low metal rumble. Its lights cut through darkness and showed old support beams, maintenance markings, and long sections of stone reinforced with alloy plates. The tunnel had likely not been used in years. Dust covered the walls. Small pieces of debris shook loose from the ceiling whenever a distant explosion struck somewhere above. Inside the transport, the mood was tense but quieter than before. For the first time since the attack began, they had a direction that felt real, not just escape from one danger into the next, but movement toward a secure military relay station outside the palace grounds. Liari sat beside Aaron on the narrow bench, wrapped in a thermal blanket from the bunker stores. She was exhausted, but she did not sleep. Every time the transport shook, her eyes opened wider. Princess Soraya sat opposite them, one hand resting gently on her daughter's shoulder. Kellen stood near the rear hatch despite his wound, still acting as guard. Aaron drove. His eyes stayed on the tunnel ahead and on the motion display fixed near the dash. Princess Soraya broke the silence first. Will the relay station be loyal? Aaron answered without looking back. We will know when we reach it. Not the answer she wanted. But by now she understood that he never lied to make fear easier. After a few minutes, the motion display flickered. Aaron slowed the transport. Kalen straightened. Contact, maybe. Soraya's heartbeat rose again. Ahead, Aaron nodded once. Something moved near the tunnel exit. Liari's small fingers tightened around the blanket. Aaron stopped the vehicle and turned off the main lights. Darkness filled the cabin except for the dull red glow of the instrument panel. Stay inside until I say otherwise, he said. Keelan stepped forward at once. I am coming with you. Aaron looked at the wounded guard's arm. You are staying with them. Kellen wanted to protest, but he knew the truth. He was slowing down. Aaron was not. The human captain opened the side maintenance hatch and slipped into the tunnel shadows. Outside the transport, the air was cold and still. Aaron moved along the wall toward the tunnel mouth, where faint moonlight entered from above. The exit opened into a rocky service trench beyond the palace outer gardens. From there, the relay station was less than 300 meters away. Too open, too easy. He lowered himself behind a broken pipe housing and studied the trench. There, heat shimmer, concealed armor, at least 5 Varkari, waiting around the exit line, maybe more near the relay station itself. So the hunters had guessed the route after all. Aaron returned to the transport. Soraya looked at his face and knew the answer before he spoke. They are there. Yes. Keelan swore softly. Liari asked in a tiny voice, Are we trapped again? Aaron knelt in front of her. No. She searched his face. How do you know? Because they think we only have one move left. Soraya frowned. Do we not? Aaron turned to the transport controls and brought up the old tunnel map. There is a drainage split 50 meters behind us. Narrow, difficult, not fit for vehicle use. But it leads to the relay station's lower energy trench. Kellen stared. How do you keep finding these paths? Aaron answered while shutting down the vehicle fully. Because I keep looking. He handed Soraya an emergency light and one spare sidearm. To Kellen, he gave a captured Varkari rifle. Then, he lifted Liari into his arms, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Stay close. Step where I step. They left the transport in darkness and moved back through the tunnel until Aaron found the narrow drainage split, half hidden behind old grating. He forced it open. Cold, dirty water ran ankle-deep through the passage. The ceiling was low. In some places, Soraya had to bend nearly double. Kellen, in armor, had to squeeze through sideways. It was miserable. It was slow. It was exactly the kind of path enemy soldiers hated. After a long crawl, the drain opened above a lower trench filled with shield conduits leading toward the relay station. Blue energy pulsed through thick cables. The station itself rose just ahead, a compact military structure of black stone and steel set into the ridge. Aaron held up one hand. Voices, dual Varkari, near the lower access gate. He gave Soraya the signal to stay low, then passed Liari gently into her arms. What are you doing? Soraya whispered, ending this part. Before she could answer, Aaron dropped into the trench below. He landed without a sound behind the first guard, pulled the raider back into shadow, and struck fast. The second turned at the faint movement, but Aaron was already on him. One short fight, one hard impact against the trench wall. Silence again. Kalen looked down in awe. By the stars. Aaron waved them forward. They reached the lower access gate. It was locked, but the dead raider carried a stolen access key. Aaron opened the hatch and ushered them inside. The relay station was alive. Lights glowed. Systems hummed. 3 Zytherian military operators looked up from their consoles in complete shock as the princess, the child, a wounded guard, and a soot-covered human captain entered through a service hatch no one used. One operator jumped to attention. Your Highness. Soraya wasted no time. Seal the station. Confirm your loyalty. Now. The operators obeyed at once. Internal scans showed no sabotage. Defense systems came online. External turrets turned outward. A comm channel linked directly to the palace command sanctum. Queen Valera appeared on the main screen only seconds later. She saw Soraya first. Then Liari. Alive. The queen's shoulders lowered by the smallest amount. Then she saw Aaron standing beside them. Blood on his coat, weapon in hand, face lined with exhaustion, but still standing like a wall. For a moment the queen said nothing. Princess Soraya spoke softly. "Mother, we are safe." Queen Valera looked at her granddaughter, Liari. The child moved closer to the screen and then looked back at Aaron before answering, as if making sure he was still there. "I am here, grandmother." The queen's eyes shone for just a second with emotion she almost never allowed others to see. Then her gaze settled fully on Aaron Hale. "Captain," she said, voice low and formal, "you have saved the blood of my house." Aaron answered simply. "She saved herself first. She knew danger before the rest of us." Queen Valera looked at Liari, and pain crossed her face. "And we did not listen." No one in the room spoke. After a moment, the queen straightened. "The traitor network is collapsing. Our fleet has broken the Valkyrie command ships. The attack is ending, but today will not be forgotten." Her eyes remained on Aaron. "Nor will what was done in my palace by a human officer." Kellen bowed his head deeply. Soraya did the same. Even the relay operators stood in silence. Liari, however, walked over to Aaron and once again hid partly behind him, peeking around his side at the screen. It was such a small child's movement, yet it carried the weight of everything that had happened. Queen Valera saw it, and once again, even after all she had witnessed, the queen gasped. Not from fear this time, not from shock alone, but from the deep understanding of what it meant. The royal child trusted the human more completely than she trusted the empire that had failed to hear her warnings. That truth cut deeper than any enemy weapon. The queen placed one hand over her heart in the old royal gesture of highest respect. No one in the room had ever seen her offer it to an outsider before. "Captain Aaron Hale of Earth," she said, "from this day onward, the House of Valera will remember your name." Aaron gave a small nod. Nothing proud, nothing dramatic, just acceptance. Soraya looked at him and finally asked the question that had been growing in her mind all night. "When Liari ran to you in the throne hall," she said, "why did you not step away in fear?" Aaron was quiet for a moment. Then he answered in the plain, simple way that seemed to define him. "Because she was a child." No great speech, no proud claim, only that. Soraya looked down. Kellen looked away, ashamed of every earlier doubt. Even Queen Valera's expression changed, because in those 4 words, she heard something stronger than military skill. Humanity. A race from a hard world. A people shaped by danger. And yet, when a frightened child reached for them, they answered not with politics, not with calculation, but with instinctive protection. The queen understood then why the stories of humans spread so quickly through the stars. It was not only because they fought hard. It was because, when it mattered most, they chose to stand between danger and the helpless. That was a power many older empires had forgotten. Outside, the battle ended. The sky above the capital slowly cleared of fire. Burning wreckage fell beyond the city. Palace sirens softened. Dawn's first pale light touched the ridge. Inside the relay station, Liari's eyes finally began to close from exhaustion. Aaron lifted her carefully and carried her to a rest couch near the wall. She did not wake as he placed the blanket around her. Queen Valera watched through the screen in silence. Then she spoke one final time. "Earth sent us a captain. Today, the stars have shown me that perhaps Earth has sent much more than that." Aaron looked at the screen. "We sent a representative," he said. The queen gave the faintest hint of a smile. "That is exactly what concerns me." For the first time that long, terrible night, a few tired people in the station almost laughed. The danger was not gone from the galaxy. Enemies would return. Questions would come. The traitor network would be hunted. Alliances would shift. And after today, many in the Empire would speak of the human captain who crossed a palace under siege, while an alien royal child hid behind him. But for now, there was only this quiet room, a sleeping child, a shaken princess, a thoughtful queen, and the growing truth none of them could deny any longer. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now it had begun to learn.